You are watching Roll for Crit, and this is our review of Dungeon Doors. This is a dungeon crawling card game wherein one player is the DM or Door Master, and the other players are heroes facing off against the Door Master. The heroes are attempting to escape while the Door Master is playing against the other players. Unlike a traditional tabletop RPG, they do want to win. But this game essentially simulates the play of a traditional tabletop RPG through cards and a lot of wacky humor.
This was the start of the game would look like, but keep in mind these playmats are extra. They don't come with the base game. The base game is much smaller, which makes sense for a game of this style. The Door Master or DM is going to start by making the first floor by laying down 3 face-down doors. We'll get back to exploring this dungeon. Everyone's going to choose a hero. They all have different cards with different classes as well as races that you'll be very familiar with if you've ever played a fantasy role-playing game. They will have the different abilities, powers, proficiencies, as well as maybe some starting items that go along with whatever their shtick is. In this game, the heroes, we're going to rotate a party leader who will decide a door to open. These doors have a bunch of different abilities, usually some form of challenges, maybe something for you to fight. You will then deal with the room, which will usually involve rolling some dice or maybe making a choice. Afterwards, assuming you all survive, the heroes are going to decide whether to stay on that floor to open another door or maybe tell the Door Master to go to another floor. If that is the case, they're going to put down 3 more cards. You can always go back to visit previous floors, but you'll have to go through some other rooms, which may or may not be deadly. Now, the heroes are trying very hard to find an exit card. There are multiple kinds of exit cards, so maybe finding the one that fits your party at the time. Some can be very specific. And if you're able to complete the task on there, it doesn't matter how many heroes. As long as one hero is able to make it out of this dungeon, the heroes have won. However, if through all these machinations, traps, monsters, the party unfortunately all dies and succumbs to wounds, then the DM has won.
As we said, there's all kinds of different doors that you can experience. A lot of them will be obstacles or treasure rooms, which will present some kind of a challenge. Often it will involve rolling a 20-sided die, trying to hit a certain result, maybe augmented by some of your items, or maybe even your weapon or armor or hero abilities, or maybe there will be some other sort of spin on it, depending on what the room is, may result in you getting a treasure card, which could be one of these 3 helpful things to slot in there. Or you could also share them amongst your party if you're, that sort of an adventurer you want to share with your friends. But of course, a lot of them are going to be combat rooms. And combat is a relatively simple affair. First thing that will happen is everyone will roll initiative to see who goes first. Then you just go clockwise from there. And on your turn, you'll roll a d20, try to match or beat the enemy's armor class, and then you will roll this d6 to see how much damage you do. And of course, again, these things are going to be augmented by cards that you have items or your hero's own stats. And then you need to simply take down their health points according to the card. If your hero's health points are reduced to 0, you do die, but you're not quite out of the game. You'll receive an afterlife card, and you'll actually get to choose which one you want. They all have different effects, but you're some kind of a spirit now, and there are ways for you to be revived or maybe hopefully help your team possibly end up hurting them as a result of that effect. And you'll keep going, like we said, until you find one of those exits and actually meet the condition on it, or everybody dies and the DM is able to put a stop to them.
The one other thing, quickly point out that the treasure cards are important because each hero has proficiencies. You may notice at the bottom there's a proficiency bonus. So for example, right now, if we flip over these 2 cards, he is proficient in the plate mail, so it's even stronger versus the weapon. So when you get treasures, maybe you do want to share or at least give the better ones to who's proficient in those kinds of gear, which you probably would do in most other RPGs anyway.
Yeah, it might be hard to come by those treasures, so you're going to want to, they're very precious if you are able to find them.
The game also knows that, so there are many ways for the DM to, as one game Jonathan experienced very well, remove all the treasures.
Yes, or you might have to, maybe you'll be able to spend a treasure to bypass a room if you're like, I don't want to deal with this. You can see there's a lot of text on some of these cards. A lot of it is flavor, so a lot of it will just be, telling you what the room is all about, the thematic element of it, and then some of it is the very different challenges that might be available to you. And again, this can be played with only one DM, but between 2 and 5 heroes. heroes. So you could have a whole team of heroes going up against each other. For them, of course, it's about hoping that they find the right card and using their skills wisely together. The DM is all about looking through their hand and trying to kind of hopefully trap or trick the heroes into going to rooms that are not helpful to them.
There are plenty of each variety of cards. So there, as you can already see, multiple exits. So you always have 5 cards as the DM to choose from. So what is very likely is maybe they're going to try to hold on to exits until maybe they have too many. Maybe that's the trick. They'll put an exit right in the beginning and hope they don't pick it, leaving that floor. They just try to accelerate up really fast, which could work. It could backfire sometimes. This is definitely a game where I think partially because the flavor of it as well and some of the way cards interact, you got to sort of unintentional, like it makes sense with the theme, but I didn't expect it when we played it to bring in some of that role playing and that fluidness you expect in an actual role playing game where you're like, you know, sometimes as the DM, maybe you did roll higher behind that screen and you didn't tell them.
Right. Yeah. A big part of this game is, I think, especially as the DM, introducing flavor to it in the sense of course, you know, maybe dramatically reading the card out to the heroes. If you can go the extra mile of doing some character voices, again, just like a regular RPG DM. And maybe there are, you know, I feel like this game really, it's almost encouraged to sort of house rule certain aspects if you feel it, you want to.
Yeah. In fact, 2 of the big ones I noticed. One, we said with treasures, they actually can be a little hard to come by. So maybe finding when you think they did something fun or cool to reward them with treasures. Yes, I know you still want to win, but make it a fun win. The other big thing is there really isn't player scaling. And I've looked online to see what other people have said. And from most people's suggestions, and I agree with this, if you're playing with either 2 heroes, you can maybe make each player control 2 heroes, so that's technically 4. Or like when you hit certain monsters, cut their health in half, you know, just making them a little bit easier to beat. Of course, this is going to be up to your discretion, and I think that's what you got to do as a fair DM. You could still win, just make them believe they have a chance.
Yeah, it's definitely the fewer heroes you have, the harder it's going to be. Like I do think for a team of just 2 heroes, you might find this kind of challenging. I feel like 3 to 5 might be the sweet spot. Maybe even 3 to 4 with 5, it could even end up being the opposite. Because again, only one hero needs to survive and find that exit. So that is another choice of the DM too. When they're controlling those enemies, they're deciding which hero do I want to attack? Who do I think is the scariest right now, possibly? That is another thing they have to do. But for the most part, they're kind of just there, you know, guiding the party through the storyline, through the adventure. And the whole game probably won't last you more than 20 or 30 minutes. And I think that also helps with the
quicker if your heroes just have some very bad rolls.
Yeah, but I think that helps with that. If you do just have bad luck or it is hard to find the exit and you die, it's like, well, you can easily pull these cards back in, shuffle it, and set up another game like in 2 minutes. It's not like this is a game that's going to take you a long time to play and you're going to feel really discouraged at the end of it. I think you got to go into this with an attitude of this really is trying to be like a silly, quick playing card game. And what happens is going to be a story. It's going to be an adventure. Whether or not it's fully balanced, it's like I said, it's kind of up to you if you want to try to throw in those rules or player count or whatever, or you just go along for the ride of it.
Crits and misses for Dungeon Doors.
Crits. The game comes with plenty of cards and a variety of rooms for you to explore, and all of them are chock full of funny, creative art and flavor that are entertaining to read through and mesh well with the tone of the gameplay.
This isn't just in the theme in terms of the flavor and the art. It also can be seen in the challenges. Maybe you have to sing something weird or do something very silly. Overall, I think it meshes well with the dice and really helps when you roll low not to feel bad and demoralizing, but instead maybe just a silly moment.
If you're a fan of tabletop role-playing games, but you find it pretty hard to get a group together and devote the time for it, then this game could help you out because it essentially simulates that process with the dice rolling, the exploration element, and the wacky adventures that can occur, but there's no prep on the part of the DM, and you can get through it in a much shorter time.
This is your reminder that it has been 4 weeks since your group has gone together again to play that role-playing game. Misses. If you're well versed in role-playing games, you know that while the rules are there to help guide you, sometimes you need to fudge them a little bit to fit the story or keep the game going. This definitely is something that applies here as well, but it wasn't as clear at first, and because it's up to someone who actually wants to win, not just tell a story, it can lead to things being a little confusing until you've set some ground rules for everyone.
This is a game where if you really want to get the most out of it and have it shine in your gameplay, you're going to want to bring a little extra imagination to the table and put some more effort into the actual role-playing part, as well as maybe tweaking some of those rules.
The most important rule you're going to want to look at is the player count and balance. Really, there is nothing in here about what you do depending on the number of players you have, and we notice this becomes extremely detrimental for those who maybe only have 2 heroes running around.
At lower player counts, it's definitely going to be difficult. I think that's why this game really seems to emphasize and encourage the more goofy role-playing aspect of it, because if you are playing it as more of a traditional balanced game of winning or losing, you're going to run into some issues where it doesn't quite always feel fair. This is a game that plays really quickly. It's very easy to set up and tear down, and it's humorous, almost akin to, in terms of its sense of humor, and of course the source material that it's sort of parodying, something like Munchkin. But in terms of the gameplay, it's not nearly that style of game. It's not going to take 3 hours. It's not a
no
take that. Yeah, there's nothing like that sort of thing. But it does play fast and easy, and if you like that style and sense of humor, I think there's a lot of fun to be had here. But again, I do want to emphasize, I think you do have to be willing to bring some of your own energy to the table. This is a game that sort of expects, I think, the players to put some of their own creativity into it, which for some people I think will be a positive thing, but for other groups, they might come to it and go, this not enough game here for me, maybe.
And I agree. It's about the mindset too. Once you go like, all right, what do we want this to mean because it would be better for the game, or maybe thematically makes sense because you're dealing with a boulder or something, then I feel it goes much smoother and you're actually having fun at the table instead of being terrified because I keep playing monsters with like 90 health. Meanwhile, you have 2 heroes that just can't hit anything because they don't have treasures yet.
Right. And I don't want to give the wrong impression. It's not like there is a rule book and there is
there are. It's just
I would say like 90% of the game, like it's pretty clear cut what to do. But there are just some instances where it feels like, wait a minute, how does this interaction work? Or does this really feel fair? And there isn't like quite an FAQ or a glossary to really help you along that front. But yeah, that is what it is. But you know, if you're into that kind of thing and you're open to that experience of trying it out, it's a very small game other than these play mats, which are pretty nice. Actually, they are kind of helpful to have the layout, but certainly I don't think they are required. It fits in a pretty small box, and it's probably one that's pretty easy to convince people to play with you because, again, very easy to learn and teach, especially if you're the DM, you can kind of just walk them through it.
Let us know if this is one where you'll kick down the door to try out Dungeon Doors and see what's inside. You can let us know if you played it and if you played the rules as written, or if you've adjusted things, as we said, with the low player count in particular is the one that we were worried about. Maybe there's still some cards you'd like to change up to make it sillier or more flavorful. We would love to hear from you, especially anyone who's interested in this game, I'm sure would love to hear your thoughts as well.
Yeah, if you have specific strategies as the door master as to the types of cards you try to look for and play, or maybe there's a specific hero that you really enjoy as one of the hero players. You know, they all have unique abilities that they have points to spend as well. So there's a lot of variability there. Talk to us in the comments section down below. Can't wait to hear from you. But my friends, I'm Jonathan.
I'm Will.
And this has been a Roll for Crit review.
Hey there, thank you so much for watching our video. Please, if you can, hit that like and subscribe. It really helps out a lot. And check out our Patreon. There we have a lot of cool stuff, including a Discord and a second part to our podcast. If you just want to hear the free one, don't worry. You can check out our board game podcast, which releases weekly, in the links down below.